One claims it's the company's only chance for survival.
Atari has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The 31-year-old
AWA presents the difference. Kodak is filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection.
What's up, guys? My name is Jake, and welcome to the 30th episode of Bankrupt. Since the mid-1980s, there has been one brand well known by many consumers as the discount party superstore. Party City was a leader in its market niche, a retail juggernaut made up of almost 1,000 stores across multiple countries, with a workforce of over 13,000 employees. But their meteoric rise wasn't without difficulties, and after various financial acquisitions and external economic blows, the company would declare bankruptcy twice. So today, let's take a look at what happened here and how this iconic retailer is now completely gone. This is Party City. Today's video is sponsored by Storyblogs. To get started with unlimited stock media downloads at one set price, head to storyblogs.com/brightsunfilms or click the link in the description below. It all started with a man named Steve Mandel. Steve had always been interested in getting into retail, better yet opening his very own store. It was the mid-1980s, and he had begun looking into the market, trying to find a niche to break into. He noticed that particularly party goods was a market that was highly fragmented, often found in small mom-and-pop stores with little inventory and selection. There was no large brand in America that specialized in celebration goods. So with an entrepreneurial spirit, Steve set out to create one. In 1986, he opened Party City in East Hanover, New Jersey. Documentation from this time is pretty sparse, but the store was an instant success. So much so that Steve was already planning another location within the first year. Part of this success came from their vast selection of items, as well as a particular focus on Halloween merchandise, dedicating a large chunk of their 4,000 square foot store to become the Halloween costume warehouse. This was a novel concept at the time, and one which was met with instant success. By 1989, Steve had franchised his store concept and brand, along with the opening of another 3 corporately owned locations. And the company would only grow from here, expanding their presence in various states and bringing the number of locations to 11. Party City would become well known as one of America's largest party supply stores, each one boasting more than 20,000 items across the, on average, 7,000 to 12,000 square foot stores. By 1993, the company had amassed over $2.4 million in net revenue across the now 58 locations. Many of these new stores would open up within malls and shopping plazas, like this one in northeastern Pennsylvania, with their Party City store opening up in a modest shopping plaza right between the Brightsunfilms Bankrupt special of a Ruby Tuesday and a Blockbuster Video. Of course, all of these brands were doing quite well at this time, and Party City expanding their presence to major retail hubs and local locations like this just proved that they were becoming one of the leaders in the party supply space. Within, their stores had towering aisles with vast merchandise, now expanding to include weddings, additional seasonal holidays, children and adult birthday parties, and of course Halloween. Expansion had now been kicked into overdrive at the company, and by 1996, they had expanded to over 164 stores across 28 states, but also different countries. Party City now had a presence in Puerto Rico, Spain, and Canada. By this point, the prospect of expansion through franchise growth was being de-emphasized in favor of corporately owned locations, a way for the brand to have more control. But all of this corporate expansion would take lots of capital. So, Party City was brought to the stock market with their IPO in March of 1986. With an opening share price of $10, their stock would double within just a few months, a sign of Wall Street's confidence in the quickly growing retailer. This was all done to fuel Steve Mandel's big plans for the company. He claimed that by the year 2000, he expected that the company would have over 1,000 stores. And by this point, it seemed like they were well on their way. The company immediately raised $20 million from their stock offering, and with ballooning revenues of $183 million and a net income of $1.4 million, the company had even more capital to conquer their niche. Party City was now the largest party supply retailer in the industry, with a monumental 35% market share. Industry experts praised the company's impressive rise, noting that Party City had even opened up the niche to a wider audience with their vast selection, making their locations the go-to place for anything in that market category, even going as far to say that the brand supply was generating its own demand. This was a time when other category killer retail brands had sprung up, like Toys R Us, Home Depot, and Office Depot. Retailers which dominated their own niche, and Party City was seen as just that. By early 1988, their stock had seen record highs, and with 369 locations, things were looking good. That was until the company had posted a disappointing third quarter, as the company had lost nearly $22 million, mainly due to their continued aggressive expansion. This sent their stock price off a cliff, and the bad news for the company only got worse from here. By early 1999, Party City had announced that they were unable to file their end-of-year audit due to bookkeeping issues. This was in violation of SEC filing regulations, and due to this, they had their stock immediately frozen. The company would ultimately be delisted from the New York Stock Exchange later that year, where multiple class action lawsuits would then be filed against the company, with shareholders claiming that they had been misled by leadership. The years of accelerated growth had amounted to large debt loads, and now with their stock price in a hole, the company was running out of liquid cash to meet their debt obligations or even pay suppliers for their merchandise. This was a massive corporate scandal for Party City and put their entire brand strategy into question. Clearly, there had been serious financial mismanagement for a major public retailer, and this corporate turmoil would require a restructuring. Both the company's CFO and CEO, the original founder Steve Mandel, would then step down. He ultimately would never see his brand reach that 1,000 store mark. The company he was now leaving behind was in financial trouble, and as a result of the fallout, there were fears that the company would soon not be able to pay suppliers. By early 2000, Party City ultimately found the money in the form of a $40 million loan to help pay off their existing debt payments and pay suppliers, one day before it was due. But in the years to come, the company was back from the brink of bankruptcy, and with its financial troubles stabilized once again, the brand was relisted to the stock market. With a new executive team at the helm, Party City was once again thriving. Headlines praised the recovery, and Wall Street once again took interest in the company's stock. New stores began to open, and by 2001, their sales had grown to nearly $400 million, close to $100 million more than their sales just 3 years prior. By 2004, Party City had grown to over 500 locations, between both corporately owned and franchised ones. With ever-increasing profit, the company was now in the crosshairs of private equity. In 2005, the company would be taken private and acquired by Weston Presido, which owned Party City's largest supplier, as well as Berkshire Partners. Both companies would make this $360 million acquisition deal through their jointly owned AAH Holdings Corporation. Under these new private owners, the company would continue to expand and even acquire other Party retailers like Factory Card Outlet and Party America. The discount Party Superstore continued to chug along through the late 2000s, still the nation's largest party supply store, and one which had incredible brand recognition when it came to their niche. Party City really was the go-to place for key events like birthday parties and Halloween, and they were the only chain in America to have such a vast selection of party goods, including balloons. While big box stores had certainly eaten away at their once dominating market share, the company was still in a comfortable position with a rather strong business. In fact, the company had grown to almost 835 locations and had a decent online presence by 2012. This dramatic growth brought in a ton of cash, and the company posted an incredible rise in sales to over $1.8 billion. But corporate ownership would once again make a radical shift. Private equity firm Thomas H. Lee Partners would then acquire the company for a staggering $2.69 billion. Remember, the previous owners had purchased the company for a mere $360 million 7 years prior, so this transaction was a colossal increase in value. They did this, however, through a leveraged buyout. In order to provide enough capital to acquire the brand, their new owners would take out a ton of debt to complete the purchase. And in classic private equity fashion, they would now saddle the company that they were buying with all of this debt. It was a total liability of around $2.2 billion worth of debt. Thomas H. Lee Partners would ultimately bring Party City back to the stock market, and it was assumed that the company would eventually pay off this debt or refinance, since the brand was still bringing in a ton of money and growing. Of course, that business plan is under the assumption that the company will face little to no headwind in the coming years, which of course, in reality, it most certainly would. By 2018, Party City would bring in a record $2.4 billion in revenue across nearly 900 stores. However, corporate didn't know it yet, but this would be the lifetime peak for the entire company. Those big box retailers, while continuing to draw customers away, would never fully attack their one key product category which brought in one of the highest margins, that being balloons. But through the last decade or so, the US has been experiencing a helium shortage. Helium is a gas primarily captured through the drilling of natural gas, and over time, as fewer refineries were built, the global supply of helium has decreased. This niche shortage had hit the company particularly hard in 2019, with rising costs, slimming margins, and balloon sales down overall. Party City would announce the closure of 45 locations, and they would also sell off their Canadian division to Canadian Tire. They would also post a massive net loss of well over $530 million. As a result, their stock fell by 67%, and this was in 2019 alone. A year later, the retail sector would be hit hard by the pandemic, and Party City was in a particularly bad spot in the market, as their entire business was based around people getting together for holidays and parties, something that was now either banned or severely discouraged. Sales had dropped sharply from $2.3 billion in 2019 to $1.8 billion in 2020. Even as COVID restrictions loosened and the world ever so slightly began to return to normal, Party City found that consumers just weren't throwing as many parties or gathering in as great of numbers as they used to. Sales continued to struggle, and the company continued to post losses in the hundreds of millions. It wasn't just the pandemic and balloon sales that were weighing down the brand. It was also competition. Party City noted that they were having lower than expected sales for Halloween, a key season for the company, and this was mainly thanks to the rise of temporary pop-up brands like Spirit Halloween, with their massive presence as well as big box stores, dollar stores, and online retail. All of these competitors were now leaning more into seasonal goods. Why make a trip out to Party City if your local Target, which you were already planning on going to, has everything you need? It also didn't help that Party City stores were so vast with their merchandise that a lot of it was just bloat. An article in Forbes noted an example with their variety of solid colored tablecloths. Many of their stores would stock 32 different options, whereas only 15 of those colors would make up 90% of their sales. Their stores, as a result, were aesthetically busy spaces with often disheveled, discount-style appearances, and this was all while merchandise wasn't always that cheap. By 2022, the company was running out of liquid cash on hand, getting as low as $30 million in one quarter. It didn't help that the company still had well over $1.3 billion in debt from their original hostile takeover, and the company was still making hefty debt payments to pay it off. It was clear that the nail-biting quarters of low cash and high debt payments weren't sustainable, and with a bleak outlook of consumer habits, the company was in a very bad place. 2022 proved to be another year of stagnant sales. To make matters much worse, they posted nearly $1 billion in net losses. Party City was running out of time to stay afloat, and on January 17, 2023, the company would file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. But the corporate owners weren't ready to let the company disappear entirely. They would set out to restructure its debt and refinance. They secured a $150 million loan to ensure the stores would stay open, and by September 2023, they exited their bankruptcy with a new private equity owner and around $1 billion in debt erased from their balance sheets. The brand seemed to be in a decent position going forward then. They would start testing new store layouts and make a partnership with Winn-Dixie for its store-within-a-store concept. Since the bankruptcy, Party City had been taken private, so it's not exactly known what their finances were really like. But judging by the headwinds facing the company, it could be assumed that the retail market they were trying to compete in was still proving to be very tough. It didn't help that a subsidiary of Party City, their largest balloon supplier, had also filed for bankruptcy. So, with balloon issues continuing to plague their stores, the company's debt continued to grow once again, now to over $800 million, and they were now allegedly struggling to pay rent for their hundreds of stores. Their vast product selection in each store suddenly got a lot more expensive to stock, and due to inflation following the pandemic, those margins on cheap products only got slimmer. This likely resulted in lower sales, and as a result, continued losses. The company was once again running out of liquid cash, as well as springing up rumors of another bankruptcy. These rumors began popping up in early December of 2024, and as the month progressed, it seemed as though that was what was going to happen. Party City declared bankruptcy for the second time on December 21st, 2024. Perhaps the worst Christmas present to their employees. This time, however, they wouldn't be fighting to survive. The company announced that they had decided to wind down operations as a whole and close all 700 or so locations across America and lay off 12,000 employees. Yeah, that's a really bad Christmas present. Party City would then begin to close all of their locations across the country and some abroad, starting immediately after their filing. Stores would liquidate all remaining merchandise, then swiftly close right after, many doing so by early 2025, though some franchise locations would opt to remain open. And that brings a close to the nearly 40-year-old retailer. In the end, Party City had a great rise in the specialty store retail landscape. There was a time in the 90s and early 2000s where if you needed something specifically for a special moment in your life, the parties or holiday events, you went to a Party City. The company was born out of an entrepreneur's desire to build something of his own, and because of the gap he saw in the market, Party City grew to become a notable retailer. But it was also one that has always been in a bit of trouble. I can't tell you how many articles I've read with the headline, "The party's over for Party City." It's just a brand that hasn't been able to get out of financial trouble. From the pretty serious and honestly self-inflicted financial scandal in the late 90s to the later private equity takeovers, it's just a brand which in my opinion has never been seen more than just an investment vehicle rather than a brand which should have been given strategic oversight and passionate corporate leadership. I think Party City had been left stagnant for too long and hadn't received enough care to evolve it to the always changing retail landscape. If you walked into a store from the 90s versus now, they're almost the same. It also didn't help that there was so much working against the company, from the downfall of their balloon sales to the increase of competition from big box, online, and dollar stores. Add on a pandemic, a ton of debt, and yearly payment obligations, all stemming from the all-too-common case of private equity firms saddling their own company with debt, and of course the company was going to be put on life support. Really, it was a pretty quick fall from their comparatively very quick rise. And I think there is an argument to be made that most of the financial trouble the brand faced was totally avoidable and mostly self-inflicted. But regardless, and as a result, the company was just not a strong enough business to weather such harsh conditions. And the private equity owners at the very end might not have even been interested in keeping the struggling company going. All of those factors led to the American company going under. But weirdly, in Canada, the brand lives on. Canadian Tire has seemingly made the brand quite successful, with all of their stores apparently doing quite well. But of course, the same cannot be said for the US operations. And once again, all of those joking headlines are popping up. So, you know what? I think I should close this video off with using it too. Because the reality is, the party really is over for Party City. Now, you might always notice that I really like using establishing stock footage in my videos, including this one. That's why I'm really excited about this video's sponsor, Storyblocks. Storyblocks is a great stock media subscription service, and it's one that I've been a paying user of since 2017. so I've trusted them for so many Brightson Films projects in the past. Now, if you've ever browsed stock media before, you'll know that sites often charge exorbitant prices for single assets. That's why Storyblocks is so appealing, as they have a vast library of media, including over 1 million 4K and HD footage, templates, music, sound, effects, images, and more. You never have to pay per clip, and with a predictable subscription cost, you can download an unlimited amount of media. That's really impressive, and they also make licensing super easy. Anything you download from Storyblocks is 100% royalty-free, so you're always legally covered with whatever media you download and use. They're just a reliable quality service, and they really do offer a fantastic deal. It's why I've been a paying subscriber of them for over 8 years now, long before they've ever approached me for sponsoring a video. So to get started with unlimited stock media downloads at one set price, head to storyblocks.com/brightsonfilms. A link will also be in the description below. Anyway guys, my name is Jake, and thank you very much for watching.